The K24 swapped EK Coupe, aka car flip number 3 on my channel, is putting me through some challenging times. This video is not a complaint. This video is not a pity party. This is all part of God's plan, and I'm trusting it. But I have been going through some challenges with that car over the last 2 weeks. It's kind of why the videos have been so sparse. That's why they've been so spread out. I haven't been making videos on these things because I just wanted to keep this series really positive and really, it's still gonna be positive, but I wanted to keep this series really like polished. You know, like in this episode we did this, in this episode we did this, in this episode we did this, in this episode we sold the car and we made some money. I wanted it to be a clean path and I wanted it to be direct, but this has gone on too long. And I think I finally found solutions to the problems. They were unforeseen. And today I'm going to tell you the story of what's been going on over the last couple of weeks. And I'm going to show you guys what I found as the issue. As this car sits, it is still broken, but the issues are, from what I understand, completely diagnosed. I'm just waiting on parts. So let me tell you the story. Friday after diner day, I was very happy. The car made great power. That was about 2 weeks ago for me at this point in time. I drove the car around a bunch after diner day on that Friday. I put tons of miles on it that day. Obviously, the car was just tuned and I was having fun and I was ripping around and I wanted to see if it was gonna have any issues. The more miles you put on a car, you know, the more likely it is to have an issue. So I was like, I'm gonna put a ton of miles on it now that it's tuned and registered and see if I'm gonna have a problem. All day, no issues. That night, I go to pick up Kearney to take her out on a date and I was picking her up in this car since it's finally running and driving and tuned and feeling great. Let me open this garage door. This lighting is a little bit subpar for my liking. Whoa. There we go. I go to pick up Kearney and we get in the car and I took her out for a rip. And you guys saw that rip. It was in the end of the dyno video. That was me taking Kearney for a ride, her reaction, whatever. It was a good time. We had a blast. So we are about to pull into where we are going on our date and the car shuts off. Of course, ruining our date. Tried diagnosing it in the parking lot, no luck. I was looking at the wrong fuse box diagram and anyway, all these things. I ended up having to call a tow truck and get it towed back to the boost cave that night. Ruined our date, ruined our night. We were both upset. It was awful. The next morning, I had only a couple hours before family was coming to town, and I wanted to just come back here, grab a few things for the day, and I also wanted to just take a quick look at this car. Turns out, the night before, Friday night, when the car broke down, and I was checking fuses and stuff, I was looking at the wrong fuse box diagram online. So I grabbed my multimeter, and I started checking fuses in this fuse box. And of course, I come across one because I didn't have my multimeter the night before, so it was like hard to check fuses. Multimeter, $5 to the auto parts store. Best way to check fuses. Grab a fuse or, you know, leave them in the car. You don't have to pull them out of the fuse box to do this. You can leave them in the fuse box. And there's 2 little metal pins on top here. Touch each probe to one of the pins. So like that one can go there, and then this one can go here. And if you hear a beep, you know this is a good fuse. It's telling you that there's continuity through this fuse, meaning it's still intact. If the fuse is broken, you will get no beep because current is unable to make its way through the fuse. That's how you check fuses really quick and easy. Best way to do it. I get in there, start checking all the fuses for continuity, and of course one doesn't beep. I'm like, no way. Pull the fuse, it's blown. I look up the fuse box diagram, and this time I get the correct one. 2000 Honda Civic, and sure enough, that fuse was for the ignition coils. So I was not getting sparked the night before. I kind of knew that when I was stranded. I wasn't sure why. I had a feeling it had something to do with something either wiring or fuse related, which if a fuse is blowing, obviously there's more to it. I popped a new fuse in there. into the ignition coil fuse, fuse number 9 on 2000 Honda Civic, and the car started right up. Drove it around a little bit and the fuse blew again. Okay, cool. Yes, I assumed that was gonna happen. I just wanted to verify it. So I popped another fuse in it, drove it back over here to the garage and parked it. I didn't touch it for a couple days because I didn't have time. I was working on editing, I was working on a couple other things. Long story short, I come to find that the O2 sensor connector, where like the O2 sensor plugs into the harness, had fallen onto the exhaust and melted to the exhaust and started blowing fuses. Apparently this is pretty common with K-swaps. I didn't know that. I didn't even think to secure it. Really dumb move, and that's what happened. So I just chopped the connector at the harness side. So now the harness side is just wires that are chopped, and then the O2 sensor is still in the exhaust with the melted connector still plugged in, obviously detached from the circuit, but I didn't want to have an exhaust leak. So I left the O2 sensor in there. And obviously, since it's not part of the circuit, if those wires touch anything, it's not gonna hurt anything. I just kind of like zip tied them up into a clump so they're out of the way. Now that the short is separated from the circuit, in my mind, in theory, I took the car out for a drive and it drove great. It drove awesome. No issues, no fuse pops. I'm thinking to myself, all right, great. This is awesome. It's running great. I put a bunch of miles on it, made sure that it was good. And I texted Kearney, and this is now a week and a half. We broke down on Friday. It had now been a whole nother week, so the following Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's now Tuesday, and that's when I figured out this issue. So I text Kearney, and I tell her, hey, I think I fixed the car, but I'm not sure. I'm going to take it to a car meet tonight. You're welcome to come with, but with this being a project car, and seeing what happened, you know, a week and a half ago Friday, you're welcome to come with, but if you do, and something happens, you're in it, you're part of it. It is what it is. Can't be upset. You chose this. I warned you. She said, all right, it's all good. Let's do it. Let's go. If something happens, it's all right. So we hop in this car and we drive it about a half hour out to the car meet, and I'm exiting the highway, and all of a sudden I start to realize that the battery isn't charging. I see my tachometer go to 0 and then pop back up and then go to 0 and then pop back up and then stay at 0. And I can sense, I can tell, I've seen this happen before many times, the alternator is not charging the battery anymore, or something is causing the alternator to not charge the battery anymore. It could be many things. I don't say anything to Kearney. I make it into the parking lot of the car meet. I coast the car in and stop in the parking spot. And I look at Kearney and I say, Kearney, the car is having a major problem right now. And she said, okay. And so at that point in time, I didn't exactly know what my options were. I was trying to figure out what I was gonna do. Kind of the best solution I figured was Uber back here to the boost cave, grab all my tools, go to the auto parts store, grab a couple alternators, because I wasn't sure which one I would need. Go back out to the car. Once I had my multimeter, I could diagnose some wiring things. And if I saw that the alternator wasn't outputting any voltage, then I could try replacing the alternator in the parking lot and just pray that that would fix it. And pretty much as soon as I called the Uber, some of you guys were actually at the car meet, and you guys offered to drive me back here to the boost cave. So I canceled the Uber and got a ride from some of you guys back to the boost cave.
Take the next right onto Illinois Road 59 North, Sutton Road.
Well, this is not a K-Swap EK. This is a FA5. It's not my FA5 either. What'd you say? This is not a car meet. It's not a car meet either. Huge shout out to the homies giving me a ride, and Kearney. Anything you guys want to shout out or plug?
Yeah. Shout out to Fully Driven. He holds these meets every Tuesday. Tiamo at South Barrington. And shout out to Boosted John. I've been a big fan.
Thank you guys. Once we got here, loaded up all my tools into Kearney's car, grabbed a couple alternators from the auto parts store, and sent it right back out there. This is where it gets wild. There was a severe tornado warning in the area, and I'm stranded with my car on jack stands. So far I've checked all the fuses, they're all good. I checked the wire continuity on the power wire, charge wire for the alternator, it's good. Alternator's not putting out 14.5 volts, and the pulley is not slipping. So I'm gonna go ahead and replace the alternator. I bought 2 different ones. I think one of them is gonna work, and we'll see if the car runs. So I went ahead and replaced the alternator in the parking lot of this bubble tea restaurant, and it did not go according to plan, unfortunately. I went ahead and fired the car up, and I went underneath it to check voltage coming out of the alternator, and still I'm getting like no voltage coming out of the alternator. So here's what I did. Limping at home with a jumper pack, literally just sitting on the engine bay, keeping the battery charged. So far it's working, we'll see what happens. I'm just trying to get as far as I can before I need to call a tow. Well guys, this place is officially a disaster. This is not how I figured this night would end, but that jumper pack saved my ass. I drove all the way home on this thing. Alternator, battery, shit the bed. That thing got me home. I'm gonna go home for the night. I'm gonna get some sleep. I'm gonna reassess, come back here. And so here I am today. The car is technically still broken, but I believe I have a diagnosis. And now I'm just waiting on parts, essentially. To cut to the meat and potatoes of the diagnosis here, I kind of suspected that my ECU was fried from whatever happened on the way out to the car meet, or what happened with the O2 sensor wiring melting to the exhaust. That could have fried something in the ECU that then fried something else. Who knows? I suspected that my ECU was fried. So I called up my buddy Eduardo, who daily drives a K-Swap EK, and I said, hey man, can I bring my ECU out to you, plug it into your car and see if your car runs like shit? He's like, sure man. So I drove out to him, brought my ECU, plugged it into his car. Sure enough, he started it up and his battery wasn't charging and it ran like shit. So we have a diagnosis. The ECU is fried, I think due to the O2 sensor connector falling onto the exhaust and shorting out. And then also, you know how I said I just chopped the connector off and I left the harness wires just chilling? They may have touched something on the chassis on the way out to the car meet, which may have fried the alternator circuit. I don't know. All I know is I need a new ECU before I can proceed. I think once I have a new ECU, we're going to be mint. I think as soon as I plug in a new ECU, this car is gonna run great. And I think it's gonna have no more issues. At least that's what I'm praying for. Once I do get the new ECU and I plug it in, if it is running great, I'm gonna put a ton of miles on it. I'm not gonna sell this car to somebody wondering if they're gonna have an electrical issue. I'm gonna sort those out no matter how long it takes, and I'm gonna verify that this car is good and reliable before I put it into one of your hands or somebody on Marketplace's hands. So with that being said, that is kind of one of the last few things that I have to do. One of the other things that I have to do is get a hood for this car. I have a hood for it, but I have to get it to fit. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have to like trim some of the hood skeleton to get it to clear the RBC. And then the last thing aside from that is just I have to get the speedometer to work, which I think is just a matter of adding a wire to the harness to connect two spots, and then I think the speedometer will work. This car is very close to being done. I need an ECU. Simon from Nomis Industries believes that my K-Pro is fine. He just thinks that the ECU itself is probably fried. So K-Pro being the white board, the ECU being the rest of it. I'm looking for a PND or a PNF ECU for a manual transmission car. I'm gonna send this whole setup as well as the new PND or PNF out to Simon from Nomis. He's going to set up the new ECU with the K-Pro stuff, and then he's just gonna plop my K-Pro board into the new ECU and send it back to me. So as soon as I have a new ECU, I can send it to Simon, get it all back probably within a week or so, and this car should be back up, running and driving, no issues, and I should be able to drive it across the country if I wanted to. From there, make the speedometer work and get a hood to fit. That's it. Then this car's for sale. So those of you that have been texting me, this is why I've been kind of like holding off on locking anything in, because I don't want to lock something in with one of you guys if the car's still having issues. I want to do the right thing here, and I want to make sure that whoever gets this car is getting a good quality, reliable car. Anyway, that's my yap session. Thank you guys for listening. That's what's going on. That's what I've been dealing with for the last like 2 weeks. That's why the videos have been so few and far between. I've been trying my best to get them out at least once a week, but it has been challenging because I have been doing so many other things in the middle. And so I guess to wrap this up, the moral to the story here is this is the dark side of car flips. This can happen. If you're someone who is thinking about starting to do car flips because you watched one of my videos, guys, you've seen some of the best case scenario situations. This car has been a hard car flip. Finish a K-swap. Oh shit, like the trans isn't working right. Rebuild the trans. Like, oh, the clutch is clapped out. Put a new clutch in it. Oh, conversion hubs. Make an exhaust. Dude, this is not a car flip. This is a project car of mine that I've now owned for 6 months that I'm just gonna sell at some point. This is no longer, just barely qualifies as a car flip anymore. I could have made so much more money if I had done like 3 or 4 smaller car flips in the 6 or 7 months that I've been doing this one. Time is of the essence, guys, if you're doing a car flip. The simpler that the car can be, the better. The simpler the repairs need to be, the better. This is the dark side of car flips right here, boys. So anyway, I'm not complaining, I'm not upset, I'm not scared, I'm not mad. This is all part of God's plan for me, and that's just what I'm doing. And I'm just gonna trust God, I'm not gonna be afraid, and I know that this will come to a conclusion sometime soon. So thank you guys for watching. I'm gonna go ahead and end this one here. The next video is going to be freaking awesome. I was talking about it last episode, but I'm working with a company that I've worked with in the past. Cool parts are coming in the next episode for this car, and I'm not factoring them into the price of this car whatsoever. It's just gonna be like a bonus upgrade for whoever gets the car, and they're sick, and it's about $1,000 in upgrades. I'm Boosted John, thank you for watching. We deserve nothing, earn everything. I'll see you guys in the next one, and thank you for listening to my Yap Fest. If you're still here, comment Velociraptor. All right, bye-bye.